I stared at the forged signature on the bank document, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. That was me. My name. My handwriting, supposedly. But I'd never signed anything. The loan was for $847,000, and it was dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I was under the hood of a 2016 Chevy Silverado at Morrison's Auto Repair, where I'd been the head mechanic for the past 14 years. My ex-husband Marcus had access to our financial records. My older sister Patricia had access to my home office. One of them had done this, and I was about to find out which one was about to destroy everything I'd spent half my life building. But let me back up, because you need to understand what I had before it all came crashing down. My name is Rebecca Chen, and I'm 47 years old. I've got grease permanently embedded under my fingernails, a small scar above my left eyebrow from a socket wrench incident in 1998, and I've rebuilt more engines than most people have driven cars. In this old industrial town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, population 34,000, still clinging to the ghost of its steel mill days, I'm known as the woman who can fix anything with 4 wheels and an engine. That reputation took decades to build, and it was worth every hour I spent covered in oil and metal shavings. Marcus and I had been married for 11 years. We met at a bar called the Rusty Nail on a Friday night in early March 2012. He was charming in that effortless way some men are. Dark eyes, easy smile, the kind of guy who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He worked in commercial real estate, wore suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent back then, and when he asked me out, I thought I was punching above my weight. My friends certainly thought so. My sister Patricia thought so too, though she made sure to remind me regularly that he was out of my league, as if I needed the reminder. We got married at City Hall in 2013, just me, Marcus, our parents, and Patricia in a gray wool dress that somehow managed to look both expensive and disapproving. No honeymoon. Marcus said we should invest the money instead. Smart, he called it. I agreed because I was in love, and because, if I'm being honest, I wanted to prove to Patricia that someone like him would choose someone like me. The early years were good, really good. Marcus was attentive, supportive of my career, and he didn't treat me like the grease monkey I am. He treated me like his equal, which in 2013 felt like winning the lottery. We bought a house in the Riverside neighborhood in 2015, a 1970s colonial with original hardwood floors, a wraparound porch, and a basement that flooded every spring. We paid $315,000 for it, and I spent weekends repairing the foundation myself, learning how to seal concrete cracks the way I'd learned to rebuild transmissions. Marcus would bring the iced tea and tell me I was amazing. I believed him. By 2020, our life looked like something from a magazine spread about suburban contentment. We had savings, we had equity in the house. I'd made head mechanic at Morrison's, which meant I got profit sharing and health insurance that actually covered dental. Marcus's real estate business was thriving. He'd made partner at Whitmore & Associates, one of the bigger firms in the county. We took a vacation to Cancun one year. We ate at restaurants where they folded your napkin while you were in the bathroom. But somewhere around year 9 of our marriage, something shifted. Marcus started staying later at the office. He said deals were closing, big ones, the kind that would set us up for life. His phone would buzz and he'd glance at it and smile. Not the smile he used to give me, but something private. I noticed, but I didn't ask. I told myself that was the mature thing to do, to trust your husband, to not be the jealous, paranoid type. Patricia certainly would have made me feel like garbage for being suspicious. "He's working hard for your future," she'd say. "Don't be that woman." Patricia had always been in my marriage, in a way that made my skin crawl. She was 5 years older than me, never married, never seemed interested in relationships, but deeply invested in the minutiae of mine. She'd visit without calling first. She'd comment on how I dressed, how I managed money, how I managed Marcus. When my mom got sick in 2019, Patricia positioned herself as the primary caregiver, and I became the ungrateful daughter who was too busy with her little garage to help. Never mind that I paid for the home health aide. Never mind that I visited Mom every single day before my shift, without fail. Mom passed away in September 2021, right before the leaves turned orange. It was a Saturday morning. I remember the hospital called at 4 a.m., and Marcus didn't even wake up. I drove there alone, held her hand for 3 hours while she was still warm, and came home to a husband who was annoyed that I hadn't bought groceries because I'd been at the hospital. After Mom died, Patricia became even more present. She'd appear at the house with casseroles that sat in our fridge until I threw them away. She'd rearrange my kitchen, helping. She had a key. Mom had given her a key to the house we were going to sell, and Patricia had never returned it. She'd let herself in while I was at work. Marcus said it was fine, that family was important. I said nothing. I learned to say nothing. This is the thing nobody tells you about gaslighting. It's not always dramatic. It's not always someone screaming in your face. Sometimes it's the slow erosion of your own judgment, the way you stop trusting your instincts because the two people closest to you have spent years implying that your instincts are wrong, that you're overreacting, that you're being paranoid, that you're not smart enough, cool enough, sophisticated enough to understand what's really happening. By early March 2024, I had 11 years of that erosion behind me. I had a beautiful house that felt hostile. I had a husband who looked at me with something that resembled pity. I had a sister who had somehow convinced me that her constant presence was a gift rather than an invasion. And I had a job I loved, which was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. On a Tuesday morning, I was under a 2007 Honda Accord, replacing brake pads, when my phone buzzed. It was a call from First National Bank. They were confirming details about the loan I'd taken out on March 1st. The loan officer's voice was professional and cheerful. She said the money had been transferred to an account in Marcus's name 3 days later. She asked if I had any questions about the terms. I didn't answer her. I just lay there under that Honda, the smell of motor oil and brake fluid filling my nostrils, trying to understand what I'd just heard. When she repeated herself, I told her I'd call her back and disconnected. I didn't go back under that car. I crawled out, grabbed my jacket, and drove straight to the bank. The loan officer's name was Stephanie Morris. She was in her 30s, with perfectly manicured nails and a concerned expression when she looked at me. I was still wearing my work clothes, gray coveralls with my name embroidered on the chest, my hair in a ponytail, my fingernails exactly as dirty as they always were. "I need to see the documentation on this loan," I said. She pulled it up on her computer and printed it out. There it was, my social security number, my signature, my name on a promissory note for $847,000, borrowed against the equity in my house at an interest rate that would cost me nearly $1.8 million over the life of the loan. I'd never signed it. I'd never even seen it before. "When did you process this?" I asked. "March 1st. The borrower came in with the application on February 27th and completed the final paperwork on March 1st. "Do you have surveillance footage?" She hesitated. "I can request that, but I'd need to know what the concern is." "The concern," I said, and my voice sounded strange to me, very calm, "is that I didn't sign this document. The signature is forged." Her face changed. The customer service smile disappeared. She started typing and her fingers moved very quickly. "I'm going to need to put a hold on this account pending investigation," she said. "And I'm going to need to report this to our fraud department. Do you want to file a police report?" I said yes. I said yes to everything. I sat in that bank for 2 hours, giving a statement to a fraud investigator named Detective Chen, no relation, though he made a joke about it that nobody laughed at. I told them about the signature, about the forged documents, about the fact that only 2 people had access to my personal information and my home office. The detective was patient. He explained that proving forgery could take time, that they'd need to examine the original documents, that they'd need to identify who exactly had brought the application to the bank. They'd check security footage. They'd subpoena phone records. They'd interview the loan officer about what the person looked like, what they said, whether they seemed nervous or prepared. "Do you have suspicions?" he asked. I thought about Marcus, who'd been distant for years. I thought about Patricia, who had a key to my house and opinions about everything. I thought about the fact that my husband had been acting like a stranger lately, and my sister had been acting like she owns the place. "Yes," I said, "I have suspicions." I didn't call Marcus to tell him what had happened. I didn't call Patricia. I drove home in silence, my mind moving through scenarios like a car engine cycling through gears. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Patricia's silver Mercedes already parked there. She was inside, in my kitchen, making coffee like she lived there. "Rebecca, you're home early," she said, not looking at me. "Marcus called. He's going to be late. Something about a property closing. I thought I'd come over and surprise you with dinner." I stood in the doorway, looking at my sister, in my kitchen, in my house, wearing an expression that suggested she was doing me a favor. "Patricia, I need you to leave," I said. She turned to me, her eyebrows raised. "Excuse me?" "I need you to leave my house, right now." "Rebecca, what's gotten into you?" She set down her coffee mug. "Did something happen? Is everything okay?" "No," I said, "everything is not okay, but I'm starting to understand why." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, that smile that had made my stomach turn for the past 3 years, the one that said she knew something I didn't, that I was the joke, and she was the only one smart enough to see the punchline. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, "but I can see you're upset. Maybe you should sit down." "Get out." She left, but not before making some comment about how stress was making me irrational, how maybe I should talk to someone, how Marcus had mentioned I'd been acting strange lately. I watched her Mercedes pull away from the curb, and I realized something with the clarity of an engine block suddenly clicking into place. I didn't know if my husband was cheating on me, but I was certain that someone in this house had stolen my identity and my future. When Marcus came home at 9 p.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table with the bank documents spread out in front of me. I watched his face go pale when he saw them. "What is this?" he asked. "I was going to ask you the same thing," I said. He sat down slowly, like his legs had suddenly stopped supporting him. He picked up one of the documents, and I watched his eyes scan the signature that wasn't mine, the account number that wasn't in our regular banking arrangement. "I don't know anything about this," he said. And I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him. Because if it wasn't Marcus, then it was Patricia. And if it was Patricia, then everything I'd tolerated, every intrusion, every subtle criticism, every time I'd let her into my house and my business and my marriage, all of it had been building toward this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him breathe, trying to figure out which of the people I'd trusted most had decided that destroying me was worth the effort. By 3 a.m., I still didn't have an answer, but I knew I was going to get one. I called my divorce attorney the next morning. Her name was Diane Kowalski, and she'd been handling family law cases in Millbrook for 23 years. Her office was above a tax preparation service on Main Street, and when I walked in at 8:30 a.m., she took one look at my face and didn't bother with pleasantries. "Tell me everything," she said, and I did. I spread the bank documents across her desk, the forged loan application, the signature that wasn't mine, the account transfer confirmation. I told her about Patricia, about the key to my house, about the way she'd been present in every corner of my life for the past 3 years. I told her about Marcus and the way he'd looked when he saw the documents, genuinely shocked, or what I'd believed was genuine shock. Diane read through everything slowly, making notes in a legal pad with a pen that cost more than my last pair of work boots. "The good news," she said finally, "is that you caught this fast. The bank froze the account, and the fraud investigator is already gathering evidence. The bad news is that proving who did this and proving intent is going to take time and money." "How much money?" I asked. "For the criminal investigation to move forward, you won't pay anything. That's the DA's job. But if you want to pursue a civil case against whoever did this, or if you need to dissolve your marriage while this is being sorted out, we're looking at somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000, depending on complexity." I felt my chest tighten. $8,000 was manageable, if I was careful, but it wasn't nothing. It was a month's profit from the shop, and I had a mortgage payment to make, property taxes, utilities. I had a life to maintain while someone else's actions were unraveling it. "Let's start with the criminal investigation," I said. "I need to know who did this before I decide what else to do." She nodded. "I'll stay in contact with Detective Chen. In the meantime, you need to do 3 things. First, change all your passwords, your email, your banking apps, everything. Second, put a fraud alert on your credit report. Third, document everything unusual you notice. If Patricia or Marcus do anything suspicious, you write it down. Date, time, what happened, any witnesses, okay?" I said okay, but as I was leaving her office, she called me back. "Rebecca, one more thing. Has Marcus asked you for anything since you found out about the loan?" I thought back to the previous night. Marcus had gone silent after seeing the documents. He'd made a bet on the couch without asking, without explaining. He'd barely spoken to me this morning. "No," I said. "He's barely spoken to me." "That's interesting," Diane said. "Keep paying attention to that." The next 3 weeks were surreal. Detective Chen called me twice with updates. They'd reviewed the bank's surveillance footage. The person who'd submitted the loan application had been a woman in her 50s, dark hair, wearing sunglasses and a mask. The loan officer couldn't make a positive ID, but she said the woman had seemed nervous, had fumbled with the application, had asked multiple questions about timing and whether the loan would be funded quickly. "Does that sound like Patricia?" I asked. "It could be, but it could be a lot of women. We're going to need more than that. Do you have any photographs of your sister in recent months? Anything that shows what she was wearing?" I did. Patricia had posted on Facebook 2 days before the loan was submitted, a photo of her at some real estate event, standing next to Marcus. They were both holding champagne glasses, both smiling. She was wearing a navy blazer and sunglasses pushed up on her head. The date stamp was February 26th. I sent the photo to Detective Chen and called Diane to tell her what I'd found. "This is good," Diane said. "This establishes motive and opportunity. But we still need to prove she actually went to the bank. Has she said anything to you since you told her to leave?" "Nothing. I haven't heard from her." "That's interesting too. A guilty person usually overcompensates. They try to act normal, or they try to explain things that haven't been questioned yet. The fact that she's gone completely silent suggests she knows you're suspicious." I hadn't thought of it that way, but Diane was right. Patricia, who'd been in my house 3 times a week for 3 years, who'd had opinions about everything I did, had simply disappeared. No phone calls, no surprise visits, no casseroles. Marcus, on the other hand, was still in the house, and it was getting worse. He'd stop talking whenever I entered a room. He'd take calls in the basement where I couldn't hear him. He'd leave for work early and come home late. One night, I found him in his car in the driveway at 2 a.m., just sitting there in the dark. And when I asked him what he was doing, he said he'd gone for a drive and hadn't wanted to wake me. It was like living with a ghost. 2 days before the end of March, Detective Chen called with news. "We've got a match," he said. Bank security footage showed a car in the parking lot that matches the registration of a vehicle owned by Patricia Elena Russo. That's your sister's maiden name, correct? She kept her maiden name professionally? "Yes," I said. My hands were shaking. "That's her." We're moving to bring her in for questioning. You should know this is happening before it becomes public. We'll likely be making an arrest within the next few days, pending her statement and what we can prove about the signature." After I hung up, I sat on the porch of my house in the March wind, watching the trees shake. I'd been right. I'd known on some level that it was Patricia, not Marcus. But knowing it intellectually and hearing it confirmed were two different things. I thought about calling Marcus to tell him, but I didn't. I thought about calling Patricia, but what would I say? Instead, I went inside and made a pot of coffee and waited. The arrest happened on March 31st, the last day of the month, a Thursday morning. I found out because Patricia's lawyer called me. His name was Richard Summers, and he had the weary tone of a man who'd been defending guilty people for a very long time. "Ms. Chen, I represent Patricia Elena Russo. She's been arrested on charges of forgery, identity theft, and fraud. She'd like to speak with you, if you're willing." "No," I said immediately. "I understand. I want you to know that she's prepared to confess. She's going to plead guilty to all charges. She wants to make restitution." I felt something collapse inside me. A confession meant no trial, no public humiliation, no chance to stand up in court and tell everyone what she'd done. It meant she'd done this, and now she was going to minimize the damage by cooperating with authorities. "Why?" I asked. "Why would she do this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Miss Chen, I'm not at liberty to discuss my client's motivations, but I can tell you that she's deeply remorseful. She's requested that I communicate to you that she's sorry and that she never intended to—" I hung up on him. That evening, Marcus came home and found me in the kitchen with the bank documents spread out in front of me again, even though I'd memorized them weeks ago. He stood in the doorway, and I watched the color drain from his face. "You know," he said. It wasn't a question. "Patricia was arrested this morning. She forged my signature. She stole $847,000 from our equity. Your girlfriend's sister is going to prison." He sat down slowly. "She's not my girlfriend," he said quietly. "Then what is she?" He looked at me, and his eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "She's the person who helped me understand that I've been unhappy for a very long time. And she's the person who convinced me that the only way to leave you without you destroying me financially was to set up a situation where you'd be the victim of fraud. So when we divorced, you'd have larger concerns than fighting me over assets." The words hung in the air between us, and I realized I was holding my breath. "You planned this together," I said. "No, Patricia came up with it. I went along with it. God, Rebecca, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I couldn't stay in this marriage. I couldn't keep pretending that I was happy with you, and I couldn't afford to have you take half of everything in a divorce." I stood up, and my chair scraped backwards so violently it nearly fell over. "You let her steal from me. You let her forge my name. You let me think I was going crazy, that my sister was just being annoying, when the whole time you two were planning to destroy me." "It wasn't like that," he said, standing up too. "I didn't know what she was going to do until after she'd already done it. I found out the day you found out. I was just as shocked as you were." "But you knew," I said. "You must have known. She didn't just decide to commit federal crimes on her own. There had to be conversations. There had to be planning." He didn't answer, and his silence was confirmation. "Get out," I said. "Rebecca, get out of my house. Now." He tried to reach for me, and I stepped back. "I'm going to call my attorney," I said, "and I'm going to file for divorce, and I'm going to make sure that you pay for what you did to me, even if Patricia's already in jail for it." He left within the hour, taking a suitcase and his laptop and whatever dignity he had left. I didn't watch him go. I sat on the couch and stared at a blank wall, and tried to process the fact that the two people I'd trusted most had conspired to betray me in a way that was almost worse than if they'd just left. At least if they'd just left, I could have blamed myself for not being good enough. But this was deliberate. This was calculated. This was two people deciding that my security, my trust, my life wasn't worth as much as their freedom from me. Diane moved fast. The divorce filing was submitted on April 2nd. Marcus didn't contest it. He couldn't, really, not with a fraud situation hanging over everything. The judge ordered a temporary asset freeze while the investigation continued, which meant neither of us could touch the house equity or our savings until a settlement was reached. It took 4 months for the criminal case against Patricia to resolve. She pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, with an additional 5 years of probation. The judge ordered her to pay restitution of $847,000, plus interest, which meant that by the time she got out, she'd owe nearly $2 million. The judge said from the bench that he'd rarely seen a case of fraud motivated by something as petty as family resentment, and that Patricia's actions had not only violated federal law, but had violated her sister's basic human decency in a way that would take years to repair. Patricia didn't look at me when the verdict was read. She just sat there, her shoulders slumped, her lawyer's hand on her elbow. And I realized that I felt absolutely nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a hollow, exhausted sadness that my own sister had decided I was worth destroying. The divorce was finalized in August. The settlement took into account the fraud situation, and the judge ruled that Marcus had to pay me $250,000 as compensation for his involvement in conspiring with Patricia, even if he hadn't directly participated in the forgery. It wasn't all of the stolen money. That was frozen in the criminal case and would eventually go to federal restitution. But it was something. I kept the house. The bank removed the forged loan from my credit report. My credit score, which had been damaged initially, slowly began to climb back up. I went back to work at Morrison's, and Mr. Morrison told me that he'd never doubted me for a second, that he'd known there was no way I'd take out a loan like that without discussing it with him first. But the thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just disappear when the legal case is resolved. It lives in your chest like a second heartbeat, a reminder that the people closest to you are also the people best positioned to hurt you. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was under a 2014 Ford F-150 replacing spark plugs when a woman walked into the shop. I didn't recognize her at first. She was tall, with gray hair and tired eyes, and she was wearing a dress that looked like it had come from a thrift store. It was Jennifer Walsh, one of the women Marcus had worked with at Whitmore and Associates. I remembered her from the company Christmas party in 2022, where she'd stood next to Marcus for most of the night, laughing at his jokes. I'd watched them, and I'd told myself I was being paranoid. I'd told myself that I was the problem, that I was the one making things up. "Rebecca," she said, "I'm Jennifer. We met years ago at a work thing." I slid out from under the truck and wiped my hands on my coveralls. "I remember you. I needed to talk to you. It's about Marcus and your sister." I felt something cold move through my stomach. "What about them?" "I was the one," she said quietly. "I was the one who told Marcus that he should leave you. I was the one who encouraged the whole thing with Patricia. I told him that he needed to get out, and I told him that Patricia would help him do it. We were involved, Marcus and I. We've been together since 2021. I stared at her. I couldn't speak. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she continued, "but I've been in therapy, and my therapist told me that what I did was wrong. What I encouraged him to do was wrong. I used your sister to help my boyfriend, my then boyfriend, defraud you. And I've been living with that knowledge for months now. It's destroying me. So I came here to tell you that I'm sorry, and to tell you that Marcus has been cheating on me the whole time, and I finally understand what it means to be on the other side of this kind of betrayal." "He's cheating on you?" I asked, and I heard the bitterness in my own voice. "Yes, with someone from his office, and I just realized that I deserve it because I helped him betray you. Karma isn't real, but consequences are." I looked at her, really looked at her, And I saw a woman who'd made terrible choices and was trying, in her own way, to atone for them. And I realized that I didn't care. I didn't care that Marcus was cheating on her. I didn't care that she was suffering. I'd moved past caring about any of them. I appreciate the apology, I said, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't give me back the months I spent wondering if I was going crazy. It doesn't give me back my sister, or my marriage, or my trust. You can't apologize your way out of that. She nodded, and her eyes filled with tears. I know, but I wanted to try anyway. She left, and I went back under the truck and finished my spark plugs. And by the time I came out, I'd already forgotten what her face looked like. Time is supposed to heal all wounds, but that's not what I've learned. What I've learned is that time gives you distance from the people who hurt you, and distance makes it easier to understand that they were never as important as you thought they were. Patricia writes me letters from federal prison. I don't read them. Diane advised me to keep them unopened in case there's ever a civil suit, but I just throw them in a box in the basement. I don't need to hear her explanations or her regrets. I don't need to know if she's sorry, or if she blames Marcus, or if she's found Jesus in a prison chapel. She made her choice, and I've made mine, which is to live my life as if she no longer exists. Marcus moved back to the city and married Jennifer Walsh in 2025, about 6 months ago. I know this because his mother told someone at the grocery store, and that person told someone else, and eventually the news made it to me. I felt nothing. Not happiness, not sadness, not even petty satisfaction. Just the recognition that he was living his life and I was living mine, and the two would never intersect again. The house is mine completely now. I've renovated the kitchen and refinished the hardwood floors myself, the way I've always wanted to do. I've built a workshop in the garage, and on weekends I tinker with engines just for the pleasure of it, not because anyone's expecting me to. I've made friends with some of the other mechanics at Morrison's, people who don't know about the fraud, or the divorce, or any of it. We go out for drinks on Friday nights and talk about cars and sports and nothing of consequence. I'm 48 now. I have grease permanently embedded under my fingernails, a small scar above my left eyebrow from a socket wrench incident in 1998, and I've rebuilt more engines than most people have driven cars. And I've also learned something that took me nearly 50 years to understand. The person who can hurt you most is never a stranger. It's always someone you've invited into your life, someone you've trusted with your secrets and your vulnerabilities and your future. But I've also learned that surviving that kind of betrayal doesn't mean you have to be grateful for the lesson. It just means you get to decide, moving forward, who deserves access to you and who doesn't. I chose myself. And that choice, more than any apology or legal victory or cosmic justice, is what finally set me free.